The year is 1967. The Six-Day War erupts. Israel, facing annihilation, fights back with ferocity. In a lightning campaign, they crush the Arab armies. The Sinai Peninsula falls. The West Bank is captured. The Golan Heights are seized. This stunning victory sends shockwaves through the world. Israel, the tiny nation, had triumphed against overwhelming odds. A myth begins to take hold. The myth of Israeli invincibility, the Iron Wall. But myths can be dangerous. They can breed complacency, they can blind you to the realities on the ground. This is precisely what happened to Israel in the years following the Six-Day War. Drunk on victory, they failed to heed the lessons of history. They underestimated their enemies, and they paid a heavy price in 1973. The Six-Day War was more than just a military victory for Israel. It was a psychological triumph. It solidified their image as an unyielding force in the Middle East. The swiftness and decisiveness of their victory left an indelible mark on the Israeli psyche. It also had a profound impact on the Arab world, shattering their confidence and sowing the seeds of resentment. The war had begun with Israel facing an existential threat. Arab armies massed on their borders, vowing to wipe them off the map. But Israel, refusing to be cowed, launched a preemptive strike. Their air force, striking with deadly precision, decimated the Egyptian air force on the ground. On the ground, Israeli tanks and infantry outmaneuvered and outfought their Arab counterparts. The world watched in astonishment as David, armed to the teeth, vanquished Goliath. Overnight, Israel transformed from a vulnerable state into a regional superpower. A sense of euphoria gripped the nation. They had proven their mettle. They had shown the world what they were capable of. The Iron Wall, it seemed, was an impenetrable fortress. The concept of the Iron Wall was not new to Israel. It was the brainchild of Ze'ev Jabotinsky, a Zionist leader in the early 20th century. Jabotinsky believed that the only way to achieve peace with the Arabs was through strength. He argued that Israel had to build an unassailable military force, an iron wall that would deter any aggression. Jabotinsky's philosophy resonated deeply with the Israelis, particularly after the horrors of the Holocaust. They had learned the hard way that weakness invited aggression. They vowed never again to be powerless, never again to be led like sheep to the slaughter. The Six-Day War, in their eyes, validated Jabotinsky's doctrine. Their military might, they believed, would guarantee their security. However, the Iron Wall doctrine had a fatal flaw. It relied on the assumption that military strength alone could ensure peace. It ignored the underlying political and social factors that fueled the Arab-Israeli conflict. It failed to recognize that true peace could only be achieved through dialogue, compromise, and mutual understanding. Section 4. Egypt plots its revenge. Enter Anwar Sadat. While Israel basked in its post-war glory, Egypt seethed with humiliation. The defeat in 1967 was a national trauma. President Gamal Abdel Nasser, the iconic leader of Pan-Arabism, died a broken man a year later. His successor, Anwar Sadat, was determined to avenge this humiliation and restore Egypt's lost pride. Sadat understood that Egypt could not defeat Israel militarily in a conventional war. Israel's air force was too powerful, its army too well equipped. So he devised a different strategy. He would launch a surprise attack, catching Israel off guard and breaching the supposedly impenetrable Bar Lev Line, a line of fortifications built by Israel along the eastern bank of the Suez Canal. Sadat knew he needed help. He turned to the Soviet Union, which was more than willing to arm and train the Egyptian military. He also embarked on a campaign of strategic deception. He lulled Israel into a false sense of security by feigning weakness and making peace overtures. All the while he was secretly preparing for war. Section 5. Operation Badr breaking the Bar Lev Line. On October 6, 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Egypt launched a surprise attack. It was the start of the Yom Kippur War. Operation Badr, named after a famous battle in Islamic history, was underway. Egyptian forces, under the cover of a massive artillery barrage, stormed across the Suez Canal. They overwhelmed the Israeli defenders, who were caught completely off guard. The attack shocked Israel to its core. The Bar Lev Line, which was supposed to be impregnable, was breached within hours. Egyptian soldiers, armed with Soviet-made anti-tank missiles, wreaked havoc on Israeli tanks. The myth of Israeli invincibility lay shattered. The Iron Wall had been breached. The initial Egyptian success was not just a military victory, it was a psychological triumph. It showed the world that Israel was not invincible. It gave hope to the Arab world that Israel could be defeated. The war, which had begun as a desperate gamble by Sadat, had exposed the vulnerability of the seemingly invincible